Welcome back to Kentucky Sports Television. Joining us now on Skype is our buddy Buzz Baker from WKYT. Buzz, how are you?
Hey, Tage, how you doing?
Good. Today, a big announcement in terms of the future of the SEC. There was an announcement that there is now a network dedicated to the Southeastern Conference. For fans that have maybe not understood the full specifics of it, why is this such an important development for the SEC as it moves forward?
Well, plain and simple, it's cash, and it's one of those deals where when it's probably the worst kept secret in the world once Texas A&M and Missouri came into the league that there was going to be an SEC network, but there was a lot of negotiations that were going on. Those have been concluded in about the last 6 months or so, and they were just waiting for the right timing. But estimates are conservatively that each school could net north of $20 million a year from an SEC network. So when you see that coupled with that article that came out the other day where I think there are only, 30 schools or something like that that are actually taking in more money than they're spending on athletics, with Kentucky being one of those, you see just how important it is to the SEC.
Now, with that, there's some talk now because of the different programming and things that the schedule for football could change to where there are 9 conference games. Mm-hmm. Do you think that would be a change that would help Kentucky? Off the top, it seems like maybe not losing one of those games.
No.
Yeah.
No. I mean, when you're already playing in the toughest league in America, and you add another league game, and you're trying to work your way up, I don't think that's something that Mark Stoops would certainly want to see. I think it's not only it's a twofold thing, and I think it'll happen eventually. And it may happen as early as the launch of this network in the fall of 2014. But it's not only from the network standpoint in terms of if people are going to be subscribers of this network, they're going to want to see the quality games. But I think more importantly, once you get into this new college football playoff, you've basically got a selections committee, which will determine the teams that are in there. And so if you've got the Big Ten teams and other conferences that are playing 9 games, and somebody is evaluating their strength of schedule against, say, an SEC team that is only playing 8 conference games and then maybe 2 lesser level teams, then you've got a situation where the commissioner would not want his league to be put at a competitive disadvantage when it came time to make those selections.
Now, on the basketball side of things, the UK basketball schedule for non-conference games was released yesterday. A lot of interesting matchups, some of the games at neutral sites, as well as Robert Morris now playing in the Kitely Classic. What was your take yesterday on seeing the non-conference schedule for UK basketball next year?
Not surprising. Not surprising. I think it's got a good balance to it. I think Michigan State early in the season will be a great test for this team, and I think it's a schedule that is heavily loaded on home games in terms of games that they ought to win. And when you've got a roster that you're redoing, especially with all this great young talent, and may not be filled absolutely as of yet, I think that's probably about what fans were anticipating.
Do you think this is going to be the norm? I mean, Calipari has made some changes, of course, since he came in. Part of it was these neutral site games. Do you think we're getting to the point where this is probably his ideal schedule with some big neutral site games and some competitive kind of middle-tier teams?
Oh, I don't think there's any question. And I think that because of, there are a lot of teams that like to go places like Maui, like Puerto Rico. We've seen that Cal turned down an opportunity to go to Maui. I don't think he likes that whole sort of thing. And those are trips that kind of favor veteran teams that know how to handle things like that. With the way Calipari is recruiting, I don't think you'll ever be able to say about any of his teams that they're veteran teams. So I think as far as the young guys go and the way he wants to do things, I think this is the template that we're going to see for his scheduling for quite a while.
What is it, we saw last year the freshmen, they struggled, of course, and the roster was not nearly as deep as it will be this year. But over those first several games, especially when they play the Michigan State and some of these other veteran teams, what is it that you think this team needs to learn or develop early on that will put them in a better chance to grow and make a run at a championship?
I don't know that it's anything that they in particular need to do. I think it's more on the coach himself, and he talked about that this year with the fact that, the first 3 years he had been here, the guys that he brought in were not only exceptional players, but they were exceptional learners and leaders. And so therefore he didn't have to do as much in terms of pushing buttons and things. And then, as you recall, probably about midway through the season last year, once we got to start the SEC schedule, Cal himself was lamenting the fact that he had not done more early on. So I think what you'll see him doing early on will be much more structured as opposed to this year. And I think you'll just see a lot more of him being very specific about what he wants, about how he wants it done. This year, the other thing, too, is that there will be consequences if you don't do it the way that he wants it done. And that's the fact that they're going to be so deep and that everybody's going to be scratching for as much playing time as they can get.
That will be a huge difference, no doubt, from last year. Football side of things, Mark Stoops probably does not have that luxury early on, and he's talked some about how depth is an issue. When you look at this team as they close from the spring game, heading into next year, what would you define as a successful season for Mark Stoops in year one at Kentucky?
I don't even look at it at wins and losses. I think it's, are you better than you were a year ago? Are you bringing in better athletes? Are you playing a style of play that will bring fans into the stadium and that will attract even better recruits? I mean, people can get into all the one-loss records they want, but with that schedule next year, that's just incredibly unfair to a first-year staff. I think before they can be properly evaluated, you've got to give them time to get their guys in here. You've got to give Neil Brown time to get the people in that he's recruiting specifically for his system. And that doesn't mean that the guys here can't play within that system. But I think, next year it's, are they better? Do you see improvement? Is there light at the end of the tunnel? And then I think you go from there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think hope can get you a lot of patience, especially with this fan base, for sure. Before we let you go, you have a Derby pick for this weekend. You excited for the race on Saturday at all?
I'm kind of a traditionalist. I like Revolutionary. I was coming back from one of the basketball games earlier in the year, was on flight with Elliott Walden, and he was really excited about the way the horse had overcome trouble. I think it was back in the wood. And then, I've got a lot of friends over at Claiborne Farm, and that's where Orb was foaled. So for those two reasons, I like Revolutionary and Orb.
All right. Well, there they are. They're the picks straight from Dave Baker. Buzz, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure getting to talk with you, and appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Happy Derby, Teach.
Hey, you too.